put together a presentation on the use of the semicolon, and I appreciate the challenge. And I'm going to argue that there are really three uses of the semicolon. It's been around since the 1500s, but it's kind of fallen out of layperson's use lately, up until a few years ago when it has come back into vogue in a big way. And I'll demonstrate that here, as when combined with the right parent, becomes the ubiquitous winky icon, the winky icon. So that's been probably the most pervasive use of and quite a pervasive use of the semicolon in recent times, is the winky icon. On a more serious note, I wanted to demonstrate there are really two uses of the semicolon. One is to separate main clauses. So, for example, we will miss Mary a lot. She was a good friend and colleague. In that phrasing, miss Mary a lot, she was a good friend and colleague. The reason we'll use a semicolon in place of a period here is that these two ideas are so closely related. Again, remember, all punctuation is a cue to the reader on how to interpret how the writer might combine these things in the writer's absence, how the writer might say these things. And here, these two ideas are so closely related that we're telling the reader that I'm ending this thought, but the thought that follows is very closely related to this. We will miss Mary a lot almost because she was a good friend and colleague, using the semicolon to join what could be two sentences. But if it was two sentences, you might miss the fact that these are closely related ideas. And again, Tom drove down the street, Tom drove to the store down West Street. Main Street was closed due to a water main break. So here again, I could use the period in place of the semicolon. What I'm telling the reader again is that these two ideas are very closely related, so that's the reason for the semicolon. So now the thing to keep in mind, is very important, is on either side of the semicolon you need to have two complete sentences, two complete main clauses as we call them, two complete ideas. So you don't want to have the semicolon with an incomplete sentence on the left side or the right side. It's got to be two complete sentences. Now the third use of the semicolon is what we would call a super comma. Sometimes when we're describing items in a list, there may be several fields, if you will, associated with each item. So for example, attending the press conference where John Boehner, this should be John Boehner's a Republican from the 8th Congressional District in Ohio, and then semicolon. Because what I'm doing is I'm saying this is a field of information regarding John Boehner. All of this is related to John Boehner. Now, and the semicolon indicates I'm about to start discussing someone else with similar characteristics, similar items described here, Nancy Pelosi. So you have John and Nancy, extremely good friends, both from the 8th Congressional District, one in California, one in Ohio, one a Republican, one a Dem. I'm being facetious, but you get the idea. Nancy Pelosi, comma. So again, I started with John Boehner, the name, the affiliation, party affiliation, so Republican, Democrat, 8th Congressional District. They both coincidentally happen to be from their 8th Congressional Districts in their respective states. And then it goes on. So I could have as many of these as I like. And what it really serves to kind of, the purpose is, if you would imagine this information in a table, the semicolon is inviting you to consider that each of these, I can make this a little bit smaller and slap them into a table to kind of visually make the point. I also have to make this a little bit smaller, unfortunately. Hopefully you can still read all this, so that what the semicolon is inviting you to do is consider that this is table information. So then John Boehner becomes the first item in the table. 8th Congressional, or the Republican, the party affiliation, becomes the second item in the table. Whoops. Well, this is probably overkill. You get the idea, but so that the let me back out of this. But you get the idea that the semicolon is a way of kind of creating in text format what you would also be accustomed to see in a table. In other words, equal items, equal fields in the table, columns, and so that's kind of how that's being used. We refer to that use of the semicolon as a super comma. So hopefully that, and I think that's about all there is to say of practical relevance about the semicolon. And I hope this was helpful. Take care.